Hey, we're back. It's daylight finally, and my voice is still kind of here. I'm C.L. Miller with Interlude Press, and I'm here with Annie Harper, she was found in the woods or the island, wherever she was. They had a big storm where she's at last night, and it knocked their power out. So we lost her for a while, but she's back. Huzzah!
Hi, everyone.
And Annie's on voice only because of a broadband issue. She's got very narrow broadband there, so we don't want her to waste the video resources. Also, we've got Interlude author Mariah Gemmel, who is, I'm so sorry, who is known on Tumblr as
L'Arc du Soleil.
So welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi. We want to talk today about a new imprint that will be launching in September, and actually pre-sales will begin next week on the first title for our imprint called Consent. And Consent is our line of erotic fiction. So, Annie, I'm going to turn this over to you. You know, why do we have a separate imprint for erotica when we have some pretty adult titles over at Interlude?
Well, you know, that's a standard operating procedure in the publishing industry. That's not a very good answer, but it is part of it. I mean, it's how you delineate and people find work, and specifically in trade. You know, if you're talking about booksellers and like we were just talking about librarians a minute ago, you know, it's not, you know, an imprint is not as significant to general readership, but it really matters into trade. So delineating titles in that way is important. Aside from that, you know, a lot of the answer to that is in the name of our imprint, Consent. You know, our commitment to what type of our commitment to what type of erotica it really is. What we're not willing to publish, what we are willing to publish. So, you know, there's many reasons to have the imprint, and those are a few.
What is the difference between an erotic title that would go to Consent and an adult title that would be published by Interlude?
Well, you know, the definition technically is within the industry where, you know, the sex drives the story versus the story drives the sex. So in Consent, it's when the sex drives the story. Which is definitely true in our first title, and you know, it also speaks to if maybe we might have books that are exploring aspects of sexuality that are maybe outside of what you would normally see in an adult romance.
Okay. We have a question pretty much on this subject as well, so I'm going to throw this in right now. This is from Claim Does Not Dispute. And the question for this party is, what are the limits on writing erotica for IP? This was actually a question, by the way, I think that was intended for the launch authors, but it seems to fit here. What are the limits on writing erotica for IP? How far can characters go before fade to black? There is a fade to black.
There is no fade to black. That's not what Consent is. I don't even think that's what the rest of IP is, unless you're talking about our white, you know, right. our other imprint. But there is no fade to black. There are limits, though. There are limits, and actually, you're really good at explaining those limits.
Well, I mean, we do have a few principles that we've set down in terms of, you know, where do we draw the line, or you know, is there a line? And we do feel there are a couple as far as Interlude goes on this front. One has to do with non-con. We will not print a story where non-consensual sex or rape is in any way romanticized or appears to contribute to rape culture. That's just a place where we don't want to be, and neither do a lot of other publishers as well. That's a pretty common policy. However, does that mean that there can never be a reference to rape in a story? No. I mean, that certainly could be a character's backstory. It could influence the way they see the world. But the moment that it crosses over into an area of somehow being eroticized or romanticized is a place where we really don't want to be. And, you know, we would certainly work with authors who feel that they're somewhere near that line to see how best to work through that. Another issue that we would have to take great care with, as do other publishers, has to do with age difference. And even though we know that there's some truly great fics and fandom that deal with age kink, when it comes to selling a novel, for the protection not only of the company but also of the authors, the laws around the world vary greatly when it comes to what may be considered pornographic material that may not be legal in one country and may be acceptable in another. We toe the line on the side of protecting the author and the company by having no underage graphic sex.
Yep, well said.
So those are our general limits, and they also apply to consent. Though we certainly, like I said, we work with authors. There are a lot of great stories out there that do involve underage characters. We do intend to have a YA line, although if you have young adult, you're typically not going to have graphic sex by definition in that.
Right.
So consent, you may have seen a logo going around about a week ago from Interlude that looked like chain almost. It was black, and unfortunately I do not have it up in front of the screen, but we'll post it again. That is the consent logo. I think a few people figured out what it referenced, but we weren't saying. So you'll be seeing a lot more of it here in the near future, because next week, actually, we'll go up for pre-sale our first title under consent. Also, our first work of episodic fiction. So 2 firsts, 1 author. She's sort of our pioneer in this area, and that is Raya. And I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your story.
Load the Dice is the title of my work. It's about a man named Eric, who's sort of an everyman. He's a copy editor for a gossip rag. He's kind of bland, except for the fact that he's a dom. And he has been for a long time, and he sort of let that slide from his life. And it comes back in a big way when he attends a party where he meets Jamie, who is a sub, who is brand new to the world of BDSM, and whose fantasies Eric decides to enact.
Now, Load the Dice first started out as a work of fan fiction, but a much shorter work of fan fiction. It was, what,
Yes.
3, 4 chapters, I believe?
Yeah, it was actually 3 separate stories, but they were all really small stories.
And now how does it play out? How long is it?
Now it plays out in 10 parts, so 10 chapters, so to speak. They're a little longer now. It's a lot longer now altogether.
It's full length. It's a full length novel altogether.
It's a full length novel, yes.
But being episodic fiction, and this is a new area for us, though certainly common in the industry. Each fantasy plays out as an episode, right?
Yes, it plays out as its own little story that's part of the bigger story, but it can stand by itself.
Maybe you can give us an idea of, for example, I mean, this is not an area I'm well versed in, but I read your original, I read your manuscript, and what really impressed me by the end of it was I felt that you treated the world with great respect.
Well, I think it deserves respect. So, it's, some people think it's this big scary thing. It's whips and chains and it's freaky. It's not. It doesn't have to be. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And, it doesn't have to be scary. It's something people do.
Oh, go ahead, Annie, please.
Well, I think that your story is a really good first title for this imprint, because so much of the story is about exploring the negotiation and the relationship, and that is, I think, what I get a normal part of a relationship like that. But it's really emphasized because Jamie is new, and also because
you go
Eric
through the story with him as he's learning.
But Eric also has limits too, emotional limits. And so I think it's really fascinating, and you do a really good job of exploring that negotiation. And so for me, it's the perfect title for the beginning of consent, because it is consent is discussed throughout the entire novel, and it's a really good fit for the imprint, in my opinion.
How hard was it to go from something that was basically three very short stories, ficlets in a way, into and not just a novel, but I mean, you had to try and accomplish two different things with this. One, you had to have 10 standalone pieces that ultimately could fit together as a book. Yeah. How hard was that?
It was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was very hard. Because not only in the original fiction, the fan fiction, I started off with this little story, and I didn't plan to take it further. So the next one was just kind of thrown in there because somebody said sequel, and I said sure. And then the third one, I jumped 6 months ahead, and I just kind of threw everything in there, and it was, there wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into it. So I skipped over a lot of stuff. But when I went back to write the whole thing as an original fiction, I had to fill in all that stuff I jumped over. Somehow I had to take 6 months and make it a story. And, it was suggested, and I took it and ran, was that I go over, in the first part, Jamie lists out his fantasies. So it's the exploration of each of those fantasies over the 6 months of these men's lives. And to fill that out was a lot, because when you say 6 months later, you can just say, well, this happened in the meantime. Actually having it happen over 6 months and actually having conflict over that time was a little challenging sometimes, but I think I managed it, and I'm excited to see what people think.
Absolutely. We've got a question for you, too. This is from, her name's Carrie, and it says, Mariah, how many stories do you have bubbling in the back of your head at any moment? I know you always have quite a few stories going, but what else is hanging out there in the back of your head?
I actually recently pitched ideas, and I pitched 5. I pitched 5 of them, and I've had about 3 more since that I've actually toyed with. Sorry. Yeah, I'm making a lot of work. I have a lot at any given time. It just doesn't stop.
Is this an area where you want to continue to explore the
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I'm very comfortable writing in it. I think it's fascinating. I love the actions of it. I love the psychology of it. I love the culture. I love all of it. I think it's really amazing. So I want to keep playing.
That's great. Annie, we have a question here for you. Will episodic fiction have its own imprint, or will episodic works be published under any branch of Interlude? This is from Amber.
Well, Amber, no, it won't have its own imprint, but yes, to the second part of your question, yes, we will absolutely look at creating episodic fiction for each of the branches of Interlude Press. So it just depends on if the story warrants it, but we definitely want to do more of it. We're very committed to that and excited that Raya is willing to be a test subject in this respect. We hope it goes well. Yeah.
It takes a very particular kind of story to work in episodic fiction, doesn't it, Annie?
It does, because you need a really great first chapter. You have to think about it like television. That's why we call it episodic fiction in part. And if you look back at the great serials, most recently, and by most recently I mean within this last 50 years, you would look at Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin, which started in the San Francisco Chronicle. But it had to be, they had to leave you with an ending that made you want to tune in next week. It's just, whether it was in your newspaper or on television. So, that's part of it. And it needs to also have, an overarching story that you take an interest in, but be satisfying every week. It can't, it can leave you with a cliffhanger, but it can't leave you feeling unsatisfied. It has to be complete in its own way. So that's a very particular type of story, and Load the Dice fit that perfectly.
It does. Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to be packaging episodic fiction. In this case, Load the Dice, but hopefully a lot more in the future in terms of how these will be sold. First of all, we want you to know, if you've noticed on our site or gone to the page once the title's available, we always put a lengthy excerpt in there so you can get a feel for what the story's about. But in the case of Load the Dice, the episodes are about the length of some of the excerpts. So we've decided that that first episode is going to be free, and not just for a short promotional period, but it's free. You can get in there, get the episode, see how you like it, and then you can decide, do I want to try another episode, because you can buy them episode by episode. Financially, it makes a lot more sense just to buy the series right up front. You can choose to buy the series so that you end up at the end just having an ebook if you like, and it'd be less expensive. Or you can purchase the print edition, which of course will also come with the multi-format ebook attached, which is the best deal all around. It'll be deeply discounted. And so that's all going to be available, and it's all going to be outlined this week. It goes up for sale next week. But I just wanted to give you a feel for how these will work. If you want to just get a feel and a taste for how episodic fiction works and what Bria's writing is like, which a lot of you already know, you have a chance to get a free download of the first episode. It looks like we've got some questions coming in. Here we go. Nadia Creek.
Nadia.
Hello. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between a fanfic published as a work in progress, this is a good question, versus episodic fiction? Are they structured differently?
For me, yes. Because when I post as a work in progress, I really post as a work in progress. I haven't written it. And I don't know what's going to happen. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants when I do that. So, yeah, I mean, in that sense, yes, it's different because I have the whole thing written. Load the Dice is complete. You're not gonna have a cliffhanger that never gets resolved. You're never gonna find it abandoned. But I mean, as well, there was a lot more planning with Load the Dice. I had to plan a lot because I had to know where it was going. I had to know, it was like we said, like a TV show. I kind of had to have all the episodes planned out so that I knew the the arc that was going over the whole thing. And with works in progress being posted, sometimes it's difficult to grasp what the arc is because you never know how it's going to turn out when you're writing and your characters all of a sudden start yelling at you to do something else. And so, yeah, a lot more planning goes into
I think you really hit on it in that you have to have the entire thing done to begin with. Yeah. And there is so much planning in episodic fiction because you have to have that sort of completed narrative for one segment, for one episode, yet it's got to fit within the construct of an entire book. And so it does require lots of planning. She has a follow-up. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to also interject that, again, it's original work, so therefore it's fleshed out in a different way. At that very base level, it doesn't rely on any source material, so that's significant. And I would also say that the way we release WIPs in fan fiction or works in progress, we'll cut it wherever we want to. We're not thinking about making sure that the reader has a satisfying experience. I mean, sometimes we're just having fun with our readers, frankly. I mean, we'll cut it where we feel like it.
Torture them.
But And I would also say one other key thing, and this is about the way that writing fan fiction is an interactive experience. Sometimes we're influenced by the comments and feedback we get from our readers, and that might influence a later chapter. That's not going to happen here. So those are all key differences.
You're writing a novel.
Yeah. Yep, it's a novel.
Let's see. Let's get back to the subject of BDSM for a moment. And there are a lot of common sort of myths and misconceptions. Boy, it's getting to be a long day at this point. I can't pronounce anything anymore.
You're doing great for being up all
You're
night.
doing great, and you look good, so keep going.
Yeah.
Now, is this a book for someone who's unfamiliar with the culture?
Absolutely. Yeah. I wrote it keeping in mind that, yes, some of my readers are going to be familiar with BDSM. So I didn't want to bore them. But it's also going to be for people who've never experienced it ever, like you. It's going to be for the people who are, dipping a toe in, just, what is this? A little curiosity. And it's also for people who've been in it all their lives, I wanted to provide an all-around experience, an introduction, so to speak, where, I introduced as well as, kinky stuff. Talking about, dominance versus submission, talking about the equality in those roles, talking about consent, talking about doing your research, talking about the psychology and the neurology of it, because there are certain factors that come into play when you play. And I definitely wanted to point those out for new people, so it doesn't seem so scary. When you have knowledge, it's not scary.
If someone's brand new to the world, what is their takeaway from this book? I mean, other than it's smoking hot, but,
Well, that's the main thing I want them to take away. But I also want them to see that it's not twisted or sick. It's a thing. It's a thing people do. It can be fun. It can be really, really satisfying. And even if you don't like it yourself, it's an acceptable thing for people to do. I really want people to see that.
Nadia also asks whether the episodic works will be published as ebook only, or will there be physical copies available? Yes, there will. You can purchase it either way, either as ebook only or print, where you get an ebook thrown in if you pre-order it. So the answer is yes, it will be turned into a novel at the end. Put that one up. Let's see. I'm hearing almost music in the background there for a second. Let's do some rapid-fire questions for you, Raya.
Okay.
This is quick question, quick answer. I love doing this with people.
Ready.
First fic you ever wrote?
I knew you were going to ask this. It's so embarrassing. I was 13, and oh god, this is so embarrassing. I wrote a Dragon Ball Z fic.
A what?
Dragon Ball Z. It's an anime.
Ah.
And my sister was into it, and I got into it, and I was like, I'm going to try this out. And so I did, and it was terrible. Oh, it was bad.
I love that everyone who's been in it, and so many started when they were 12 or 13.
Yeah, that's
and they know exactly what the first thing was they wrote.
Yep.
They know where it is, generally.
I'm not telling you where it is.
We have some hints on a couple of them. One is in a box somewhere. One is online, and we're going to look it up.
I'm not telling you. I'm not hinting.
I'm so impressed at the memories out there. The most influential author for you?
Richard Adams, without a doubt.
Richard Adams, why?
Because I've been reading him since I was 6. My grandfather didn't fool around. He had me reading when I was 3. And when I was 6 years old, he handed me my first novel, and it was Watership Down. And I didn't understand a lick of it, but I read it, and then I read it again, and then I read it again until I understood it, because that's what he told me to do. So.
Do you ever go back to it?
Oh, all the time. Yes, I go back to his other novels too. He's penned a lot of great novels, so his style has definitely affected me.
Favorite movie?
Match Point.
It's a fun movie.
I love that movie.
That'll work. How about telling us one thing we don't know about you?
I can nap flint.
Wait,
I can make knives out of stone and arrowheads and stuff. I can take a rock and bash another rock and get an arrowhead out of it.
I need to
took a workshop on that. I was an anthropology student. So we did all kinds of weird stuff, and one of them was we took a workshop on flint napping. You take flint or another kind of sedimentary rock, and you take a hard rock, because flint is soft, and you have to tap it, and you bash it, and you have to do it, you get off little flakes, little bit at a time until you have a blade.
So you're the person we want to take camping.
Yes, except for the fact that I'm really bad at camping. I can't put up a tent. I can't hike.
But it sounds like you can make fire.
I can't make fire either. I mean, I might be able to strike some sparks, but beyond that, I don't know what to do.
Tell me this, and I'm kind of asking a variation of this with everybody today, but what were the greatest challenges for you in going through a project of converting fan fiction to novel? What were your expectations going into it, and how closely did those line up with what you experienced?
I went into it expecting it to be easier than it was, and I was expecting it to be difficult. I was expecting it to be difficult, but it was way harder. Because, you start with fan fiction, you have the characters already, You have set characters, you have their histories, you have their family, you have their personality, you have their looks, you have everything about them. And when you go into original, you have to create somebody from the ground up. And that's literally what I had to do. I started with a name, and then it was a process. You have to build what they look like, personality, family history, major events in their life. You have to build their romantic history. You have to build their sexual history. You have to build all of that. And it's a lot.
How did you know when you were done with the characters?
When the deadline happened. And I was forced to give them up. That was when it was. I don't think they're done growing ever. Whenever I play with them, that's when they keep growing.
Did you feel by the time you turned it in that they had developed their own unique voices?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's the first thing I tackled before I even went and redid the story and had to plot out the whole thing. Before I even outlined that, I started with the characters, and I started with their, like I said, I started with their names. I started when that went to family history, because I gave them very specific family histories, very specific heritages.
Yeah, can you talk about that? Can you talk about the heritage?
Yeah. I mean, the main character, Eric, he's Anglo-Saxon. He's, every blonde white guy walking down the street. And he came from a very WASP background. But Jamie is multiracial. He's Arab and Vietnamese. And I drew part of that from my own history. I have in my blood. And the Vietnamese, I pulled out of nowhere. I decided he was going to be white, and because diversity is important. And I gave him, the family history. I gave him a Muslim father, who was not very approving. And I gave him a tiny grandmother, and all those little things that build funny.
You're breaking up just a little bit. You've got a headset in. Okay.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah, you sound better now. The last part I was missing, maybe everyone else heard it. But if you want to just kind of cover that last little bit again, just in case it wasn't clear.
Yeah, talking about Jamie and how he's multiracial and how when I came up with his name, it was giving him that Muslim father, giving him that family history, and then going to the other side and giving him this Asian heritage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I give him a tiny Asian grandmother, and all these little family histories that build somebody into who they are.
Now I hear it. Thank you. I don't know if it was the movement or what, but your microphone was in and out a bit for a while there. You also have some really strong supporting characters in this. Do you want to talk about them at all?
Yeah, I mean, supporting characters I also built from the ground up. Even if you don't know that history, I think it's important to be there just to flesh them out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I took the supporting characters and I gave them names. I gave them family history. I did the whole spiel over again. And I treated them as if they were main characters until I wrote them, and then they ended up on the side. But still important.
We have a question from Sarah who asks, posting it there, have you or will you use your anthropology knowledge in a work of fiction, like have a story set in the past or have an anthropologist character?
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you ever thought about that? Is there something?
Yes, I've thought about it, yeah. And it's in the back of my head, even as just a little tidbit for some of my works, stuff that's not totally fleshed out, it's just an idea so far. Yeah.
Okay, great. Annie, we've got one for you here. And this is from Kat. With the foray into episodic formats, will IP open itself up to the artists of fandom with graphic novels?
Absolutely. We have amazing artists. And we would love to consider that.
Absolutely. Something for discussion. We may not have it on the calendar just yet, but graphic novels are fascinating. They're artistic, they're smart, and we'd love to hear more about it. All right, so just once again, just to repeat, the book will be available for pre-sale in the U.S. and Canada next week. We're going to be offering up that first episode for free. We're very excited about it. It's a whole new world. Raya's kind of our pioneer in this area. And you'll also be seeing your cover art a little later today as well. And people who've been seeing our teasers at this point can probably figure out which one it is.
It's on the nose, yeah.
It's not the one with the pilot. I'll get a spoiler. It's not the one with the pilot. But we're going to be unveiling a whole lot of cover art later today, and this is one of the covers as well. We'll have all the information, sales and pricing. Carrie just said that she just flailed at the idea of graphic novels, so we have a hearty thumbs up from one of the viewers. Anyway, that information will be up this week, and the pre-sale will be available next week on Load the Dice, our first work under our erotic imprint. Consent, and you try saying that after 28 hours awake. It's not easy. Coming up next in a little over an hour is somewhere in here, buried is there it is, my schedule. Yes, coming up at 10 a.m., no, not 10 a.m., next is noon Eastern Time, 9 Pacific Time. Actually, Random Acts of Douchebaggery is going to be stepping in and hosting that one. for us. She also hosts the Lima Heights Adjacent podcast, as you may know. She's very good at that. And this will be on the 2014 Fall Book Reveal. So these are the rest of the novels that we'll be publishing here in 2014. That will be with, you know them on Tumblr, at least, as Lynn Charles, who's Don't Be Fancy, Erin Finnegan, who's sort of right here, and Laura Stone, who's Stony321. So we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Annie.
Wait, we have a giveaway.
Wait, we got a giveaway.
Oh, my gosh, we have a giveaway. How can I possibly forget? Thank
You've been
you.
awake a long time. It's okay.
We do. We have a giveaway of a free ebook for Load the Dice.
We do. And the winner is Kyle Blaine.
Yay.
Congratulations, Kyle Blaine. And also I want to let you know, people whose questions got on the air, there will be gifts. We do pick out the best question to get. And I thought for this one, we had a black leather journal, and there was something about a black leather journal that I thought would be really good for this group. So one of you question askers, I think it's got to be Carrie. She asked us several questions. Carrie, you are receiving a black leather journal. It's I love journals, so I think this will be a great one. We'll try and get in touch with you, or drop us an email at promotions@interludepress.com so we know where to get this to you. Thanks, everybody, and we hope to see you at noon Eastern Time, 9 Pacific Time, when we'll talk about the rest of our titles for 2014. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.